cat's out the bag. I told you that weeks ago when they had this whole national anthem policy that was being implemented. It's too late for all of that. And then you see people coming out of the woodwork after we talked about it on First Take, and they were making the point. Well, I was making the point. You don't get to sit up there in the aftermath of all of that, then institute a policy and think that people are going to forget about Colin Kaepernick. Anybody that comes out of the locker room after the national anthem is being played is going to be under a microscope. That is what I said then. I stand by that now. And when you bring up the diversionary tactics of the president, it's not that you're wrong. You're not wrong with what you're saying, because I totally believe that. What I'm saying to you is we don't need to bring up pardoning oneself or the Russia investigation. Anything that deviates from what President Trump doesn't want you focusing on, he's going to find something that garners that level of attention. It's his MO. See, a lot of times we get caught up because he's the president of the United States, and we're getting caught up in particulars. You know, it's the Russia investigation, it's the pardoning oneself or whatever. This man has always been that way. Always. When he was a businessman, long before he was the president. It's what he does. So the MO is very, very predictable. And to answer the question directly, we have to take into account what the NFL did here. They were cowardice. They were hypocritical when they instituted the national anthem policy, because they essentially caved. Now, they were forced to some degree, because the president successfully hijacked Colin Kaepernick's issue, protesting racism, racial inequality, law enforcement issues with the minority communities throughout this country. That was Colin Kaepernick's focus. The president turned it into patriotism. He pulled it off. And I've been saying that since it happened. He pulled it off, and he did so successfully. Hold on. So the point that I'm trying to make to you is that because he has pulled that off successfully, you're right, Max, when you talk about finding the moral compass and sticking to it. The owners, however, I use hypocrisy, I use cowardice, because they're the ones that engaged in paid patriotism. They engaged in paid patriotism dating back to 2008, 2009, when they were taking dollars from the Department of Defense. And so, but the minute you do that, then to turn around and find yourself in this predicament is catastrophic. The reason why the NBA and other leagues don't have that problem, ladies and gentlemen, is because they always had that policy in place, mandating that you stood for the national anthem. The NFL was busy taking money, but never ever conjured up the nerve, or whatever you want to call it, to come to the players and say, excuse me, we will have a policy that mandates you stand for the national anthem. So because they didn't have that policy, once the Colin Kaepernick stuff came in, it was a boatload of trouble. Had that been any other league, it would have been different, because they already had a policy in place. Yeah. But the NFL did not, and they found themselves in this compromising position. They've tried to wiggle their way out of it, and this is the president's way of reminding them, you won't pull that off unless I allow you to do it.
And that's
exactly what's going on here.
That's why I say the NFL has to find their own moral compass. That is exactly why, because Trump is very good at playing that game. You're not going to win that game. I'm from New York, you're from New York. You remember Trump, he knows the tabloid game from the 1980s in New York City with the Post and the Daily News. You think the NFL owners are going to be able to mess with him in terms of messaging in the press?
Especially when he's incentivized, because he's still ticked off that they denied him entry into the league because they didn't allow him to own the Buffalo Bills.
But the reason it's important to frame it this way is because what is really going on in this country right now is the question, is the president above the law? Or do we have a king? And reasonable people all agree the answer is no to both those questions. But what's actually being asked is, how do you feel about the president disinviting a football team to the White House? See, he'll always be able to do that as a distraction. The question is, will the NFL allow themselves to be used?
They've already.
Yes or no?
Well, listen, you used the word used. They've already been played like puppets on a string. You understand? Let's understand something here. It's not good to say, but we're going to say it right here on First Take. Donald Trump has the NFL in the palm of his hands. He can do whatever he wants to them right now because of the positions they've taken or the positions they refuse to take preceding the whole Colin Kaepernick thing. The fact that he has a constituency, we want to sit up there and we want to The man got over 62 million votes. You got a lot of folks out there who are patrons of the NFL product. The NFL, a matter of fact, some of the NFL owners are his friends. And make no mistake about it, the constituency they cater to, the patrons that they cater to, a lot of them were Trump voters. He knows it. He took the position that he took.
Yep.
You could call it a diversionary tactic or whatever the case may be, but what it comes down to is that the power of influence matters. He has it, particularly over them, because he knows what they tried to do. He knows what he wants to do. More importantly, he knows how to do it better than them, and he's got them by the you-know-what, because they folded to him.
Stephen A., this is what I want to get on the record in front of the crowd, though. I get that it's a distractionary tactic, and I also understand that you essentially gave this policy. You essentially were the first person to put this float this idea out there. But you don't agree with it. So what do you think they should have done?
First of all, the moment you took money from the Department of Defense, you should have made sure you had a policy in place that mandated folks were standing for the national anthem, so you would never have encountered this problem. That's number one. Because remember, Colin Kaepernick violated no bylaws of the National Football League. He didn't violate anything. He exercised his rights as an American citizen, as a football player. The NFL is a private industry, and there was no policy in place mandating that he stand for the national anthem. The other leagues had it in place, but the NFL didn't. My suggestion was, hey, look, it is what it is. The owners are saying their bottom line is compromised. My attitude is that it's too late. The cat's out the bag. Join the Players Association and collectively bargain what's allowed and disallowed, okay, or not allowable, and go with it from there. Because the real problem the NFL owners have right now is that you're not on the same page as the players.
Still divisive.